The classes of Dr. Dark are now in session. I tried telling other people. They feigned sympathy. But I know all they see is the grief-stricken ramblings of a mourning sibling. It's been a while since I sat down and wrote this much. But I figured it was important to get it out there. Maybe for closure, maybe to honor his memory. It doesn't matter. Let's get this over with. I've always been fond of the outdoors. I live for the cool air blowing through the trees, the crunch of leaves underneath my feet, and the vast tapestry of stars spread out against the inky void. My brother, who I'll call Jay for this story, was pretty much the exact opposite. Calling him a recluse would be an understatement. I don't think anybody ever actually saw him since he moved out of the house, and the most I heard from him was a monthly phone call. The very concept of the outdoors was anathema to him. He also had a debilitating fear of the dark. He'd often text my mom in the middle of the night, rambling about some horrific nightmare he'd had. And he still has his blanket from when he was a kid. Most people who hear about his laugh assume it's a simple phobia, but few understand the depths of his revulsion. This, along with a plethora of other reasons, was what finally led me to a decision. Jay would go camping with me, whether he liked it or not. I would come down there and drag him out of the house if need be. I texted him. To my surprise, he agreed, as long as I picked him up from his house. Easy enough, I thought. I started up my old minivan and got on the road. His house was nondescript. Just another small, one-bedroom flat in a sea of others exactly like it. I opened the unlocked door and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the light. Every surface was washed with a glowing light that emanated from several searing white bulbs on the ceiling. Even the underside of the dinner table was lit with a high-powered flashlight. The next thing was the filth. Piles of old clothes were strewn across the floor, and a thin layer of the grease covered the kitchen. I slowly ascended the stairs to Joe's room. I didn't need to knock. It was as if he knew I was there, and he opened the door as soon as I reached the top of the stairs. He silently walked over to me. Already fairly creeped out, I decided to just get back in the car, which I did. Jay followed me just behind. We drove silently. I asked him if I could put on some music or something, and he just nodded. The rest of the 8-hour drive was more of the same. When we got there, I was so excited I jumped out of the car. We set up our tents in silence. This silence I could tolerate, however, as it was punctuated by the gentle chirping of birds. The first day went by smoothly, until night fell. We roasted some marshmallows around the campfire, almost forgetting just how quiet it was, and went to bed at around 9 or 10. Jay seemed fine, and we were in separate tents, so I didn't worry too much about it. Big mistake. As I usually go on camping trips, I woke up in the middle of the night and went outside to take in the ambient sounds. I looked up groggily and almost gasped. The stars were blinking out one by one. The tiny points of light above me were disappearing, seemingly randomly. At first, it was too small to notice, but soon patches of sky were entirely shrouded in darkness. I was about to pass it off as sleep-deprived hallucinations when I heard groaning coming from Jay's tent. I rushed inside and looked over to Jay's sleeping bag. He seemed to just be having a nightmare. As I looked closer, I noticed tiny black spots near the corner of his mouth, like specks of tar. Then all at once, a jet black liquid came rushing from every orifice on his face. I screamed like terror. I wanted to call 911, but my legs stayed frozen as more and more of that thick tar-like substance spurted from his eyes and mouth. As it touched his skin, it burned away the flesh. So by the time it was done, all that remained was a large greyish stain on the sleeping bag. I was hyperventilating at this point. I had just watched my brother die in front of my eyes, and I had done nothing. I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't help it, and I started crying. Who could I tell? They won't believe me. They all pretend to understand, but I know they'd think I'm going insane. Maybe I am. Who knows at this point? I've started keeping the light on while I sleep from that day on.